Hi everyone, I'm going to be discussing about the topic food insecurity in Australia. Australia exports 60% of its food, but most people lack access to it. The growth in food shortage in Australia during COVID-19 is leading people in rural places to experience access to food, education, social isolation, time taken to distribute food, food literacy rates, and poverty all play a role in the growing food crisis in rural areas as do factors like COVID-19 related overspending in urban centers and the high cost of food once it reaches the countryside. And because of the emphasis on feeding the city, people living in the country have less access to healthy, locally grown produce. Charitable groups that contribute food to rural areas find ways to alleviate food insecurity. Also, the government food programs help provide food to those who need it. For the internal pressures, food supplies in Australia tend to focus on serving major cities, which leads to food insecurity in rural areas. Food was wasted because residents in Australia's cities shop in imposed during the height of COVID-19. Such consumer-related activities enhance food insecurity for rural communities since the populations rely on the residual food available. People in rural areas are less likely to look for creative solutions to food insecurity because of socioeconomic factors like lack of education and food literacy. Eventually, the communities will have to rely on the government and nonprofits. Isolation contributes to food insecurity by slowing the progress of food suppliers to remote Australian communities. For the external pressures include travel limitations brought on by the COVID-19 virus, the increased human-to-human transmission of COVID-19 by surface germs is the primary cause of the limits. Because Australia cannot benefit from international trade, food insecurity has increased as a result of the closing of trade routes. As a result, as there is less money available to help the unemployed and the underprivileged in both urban and rural areas. The possibility of becoming hungry rises as a result of this. Reduced availability in rural areas is the direct result of government efforts to save money in the face of international trade restrictions. I believe that the government needs to promote community-based projects that aid the communities in relying on themselves as the government concentrates on controlling the spread of COVID-19. The fact that Australia can feed its rural citizens despite exporting 60% of its crops demonstrates the country's food security. In order to raise rural areas' level of living, the government should invest heavily in their infrastructure, schools, farms, and hospitals. Thank you for your listening.